Last February, a homeowner in Cleveland paid $1,847 to repair a snowblower he bought 3 winters earlier for $749. Not a freak accident, not a lemon, just a perfectly normal outcome for a machine built to the standards that now dominate this industry. And if you've noticed your equipment struggling, stalling, or flat out dying right when you need it most, you're not being unlucky. You're being harvested. The snowblower industry has quietly engineered one of the most effective replacement cycles in the entire home equipment market, and the mechanism they use to do it is hidden inside a component most owners never think to inspect until it's already too late. There was a time when buying a snowblower was a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. Your grandfather bought one, probably an Ariens or a Toro, sometime in the late 1960s or early 1970s, bolted it together in an afternoon, and ran it for 30 years without a single major repair. The auger was cast iron. The impeller housing was thick-gauge steel. The drive system was built around gear assemblies that a competent mechanic could rebuild on a workbench for under $60. These machines were heavy, deliberately so, because weight meant metal, and metal meant longevity. Repair technicians who've been in the business for decades will tell you the same thing. They barely saw those units. There was nothing to fix. The engineering philosophy was simple: build it right the first time, and the customer will tell their neighbors. Something changed around 2005, and the industry has never talked about it publicly. That's the year several of the major manufacturers, under pressure from big box retail contracts, began what the supply chain quietly calls value optimization. That's the polished term. What it actually means is systematic material substitution. The goal wasn't to make a better snowblower. The goal was to make a snowblower that hit a price point on a showroom floor, looked identical to a premium machine, and lasted just long enough to clear the warranty window. Industry data from Repair Networks shows the average 2-stage snowblower lifespan dropped from roughly 22 years in the 1980s to between 6 and 9 years today. Same category, same price, adjusted for inflation, less than half the life. Let's start with the component in the title, the auger, because this is where the deception runs deepest. The auger is the spiral blade that bites into the snow and feeds it toward the impeller. On machines built before the mid-2000s, those blades were thick, cold-rolled steel, sometimes cast iron on commercial units. They flexed under impact without fracturing. Today, on the vast majority of consumer machines across nearly every major brand, those auger paddles are thinner-gauge stamped steel, sometimes reinforced with rubber compounds on single-stage models that wear down in as few as 4 seasons. Here's the number that should make you angry. The material cost difference between the old auger assembly and today's stamped version is approximately $11 per unit at the manufacturing level. $11. Your cost when that auger fails and pulls the entire lower drive assembly with it? Repair technicians report an average invoice of $380 to $520 for an auger replacement on a modern 2-stage unit. That $11 savings costs you $450. And most people just buy a new machine. Now, manufacturers will tell you shear bolts are a safety feature, and technically, they're not wrong. A shear bolt is designed to snap when the auger hits a buried obstruction, protecting the drivetrain. That part is legitimate engineering. Here's where it gets dishonest. On older machines, shear bolts were standard hardware. Hex bolts you could buy at any hardware store for 30 cents a piece. Operators kept a handful in their coat pocket. If one sheared, you replaced it in 4 minutes and kept moving. On many current production models, the shear bolt has been replaced with a proprietary shear pin, specific to that machine, available only through the manufacturer's parts network, at roughly $4 to $7 per pin, plus shipping if your dealer is out of stock. In the middle of a blizzard, when you need to clear your driveway in the next 2 hours before it freezes solid, that proprietary pin becomes a $90 emergency service call. That's not a safety feature. That's a subscription model disguised as a bolt. But the Auger isn't the only casualty of the new cost-cutting playbook. The impeller housing, the steel chamber that accelerates snow up the discharge chute, used to be formed from 12 to 14 gauge steel on quality machines. Independent analysis of current production units from several leading brands shows that housing has thinned to 18 or even 20 gauge on entry and mid-tier models. The difference isn't visible on a showroom floor. You can't feel it through a glove. But field technicians see it constantly. Housings that crack under thermal stress and thaw, your second or third winter, particularly in climates that swing between deep freeze and above freezing temperatures repeatedly throughout the season. A replacement impeller housing, parts and labor, runs between $290 and $480 depending on the machine. And here's the detail that makes it worse. On many current designs, the housing is integrated with mounting points for the Auger gearbox. So one cracked housing becomes a cascading repair. Here's the part nobody puts in the brochure. When a snowblower manufacturer sells through a major retail chain, they're operating on razor-thin margins, sometimes as low as 8 to 12% per unit. The repair parts business, proprietary parts specifically, carries margins of 60 to 80%. So every machine that fails, out of warranty, and requires a proprietary component is dramatically more profitable than the original sale. Manufacturers and their authorized dealers have a powerful financial incentive, not to build machines that last forever, but to build machines that last just long enough and then fail in ways that require their parts, their service, their next model. Consumer analysis of parts pricing across major brands shows that replacing the three most commonly failed components on a modern mid-range snowblower, auger assembly, impeller housing, and carburetor, would cost between $780 and $1,100 in parts and labor. The machine cost $899 new. You do the math. And here's what makes this particular trap so effective. Winter doesn't negotiate. When your furnace fails in November, you have days to research a repair. When your snowblower dies at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday, with 8 inches on the ground and a work commute in 2 hours, you don't have time to comparison shop. You call whoever answers. You pay whatever they quote. The manufacturers understand this leverage intimately. The failure points are engineered, and service data strongly suggests they're clustered, right around years 4 through 6, just outside the standard 2-year warranty window. When your options are limited, your urgency is maximum, and your negotiating position is essentially zero. This isn't just a snowblower problem. It's the template, applied to an industry where seasonal urgency strips away consumer patience. Lawnmowers, pressure washers, generators, the same material substitution patterns appear across the entire outdoor power equipment category. But snowblowers are uniquely exposed because failure isn't an inconvenience, it's a safety issue, and manufacturers know you'll pay to solve a safety issue. So what can you actually do before the next storm rolls in? First, before you buy anything, pull the spec sheet and look for auger material listed as steel, not composite, or rubber-tipped steel. If they won't publish the gauge, that's your answer. Second, check shear bolt compatibility before purchase. If the manual lists a proprietary part number rather than a standard bolt size, walk away. Third, search the model number or alongside impeller housing crack in any forum. Repair technicians post these patterns publicly, and the failure histories are already written. You just have to look. You're not powerless here, you're informed, and that's the thing they didn't plan for. Subscribe, because next week, we're pulling apart the generator industry, and what we found about engine hour ratings is going to change how you buy backup power permanently.